Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Hello, and welcome back to Wallula's weekly podcast, Small Talk. My name is Zach Bolin, student pastor here at Wallula Christian Church. I'm joined by Craig Archer, worship pastor, and Lance Kaufman, lead pastor. We are glad that you are with us today. We are continuing on in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 2. And we're going to be looking at sort of the beginning of Nehemiah, I guess getting ready to head out, but we'll see what that interaction was like. How did he go from being in the king's service to actually being allowed to leave? And before we do that, we're going to start off with a fun question, a silly question, because it's in, the word silly is in it. So it says, looking back to when you were younger, what was your silliest fear? The thing that, looking back, you're like, man, why was I afraid of that? It's such a silly thing. Yeah. What about you, Craig?
Quicksand.
Yeah? And what caused that fear? Was there like a movie or a show?
Well, I don't recall it being in a movie or show. I'm sure it was. I probably saw it. But I lived out on a gravel road, and I remember we would go on family walks down the road a little bit, and I remember my brothers like pointing out in the ditch, and there was like kind of sandy, and he would say, "That's quicksand." Mm-hmm. And from my knowledge, if even my toe touched the quicksand, I was sucked in. I was gone. Yeah. There was no hope. Right. I was sucked into the dark abyss of quicksand, and I would just be gone forever. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't go near that stuff.
Yeah, it'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you're a child of a certain era,
yeah,
it was like a big part of your entertainment
right.
was quicksand.
Yes.
I've seen different memes of like people saying, I expected quicksand to be a lot more
right. It was just
more problem in my life. Yeah. Because it was made its way into like every TV series.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if there was something I saw, like Indiana Jones or something like that, but I don't remember. Actually,
it sounds right. Like
I could tell you what I probably just assumed was also like quicksand, but was Never Ending Story. Have you guys seen that? Oh man,
yeah,
that's a rough movie as a kid. But there's a lot of intense stuff. The wolf at the end is really scary, but his horse, and I forget it's Bastion. I forget.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, it's going through. It's like the swamp of despair or something. Anyway. This beautiful white horse, he's trudging along to this mud, and then it just starts sinking. And he's like, come on, girl, come on. And you just see it going down, and I was like, oh, no. And I remember that was a rough thing. And it wasn't quicksand, but it was also the idea of, like, sinking in mud or quicksand. Sure. And so, that was rough. And then you grow up, and this is a side note, you grow up and you're like, well, that was, it's a movie. Mm-hmm. And then I heard, which this could be made up to, this could be another urban legend, that horse actually died, like, because there's a complication in the rigging that lowered it, that it didn't come back up. Oh, wow. And so then, like, it all comes back again. It did die. Yeah.
I was going to say, too, at a young age, when quicksand was a thing to be worried about, I think I felt like I knew how to get out, because that was part of it too. It was like, oh,
what are you gonna do?
You gotta think about this too. It's like, oh, don't move. The more you wiggle, the deeper you go. So you kind of had the strategy in your head of like, if I were to accidentally step into this stuff, you got to be confident, calm and collected.
You gotta don't you lay back?
Plan.
Yeah,
you gotta
spread yourself
out
and don't move.
Don't try to wiggle more. I've seen people like tutorials on like a YouTube thing, be like, here's how to get it out of quicksand, and it's someone actively getting themselves in it, but it's always near a beach, like it's sandy,
like wet.
I don't know if there's like air coming up and loosening it, and so it's someone like squishing themselves down, and sure enough, I'm like, they had to work a little bit to get in it, and then I'm like, well, if there was always near a beach, why in Kansas was or Texas where I grew up? You think that'd be more of a thing for
along
people
the
who
dirt
were
roads of McPherson, Kansas.
That's right. Yeah. I actually thought of quicksand too, but then I didn't. That wasn't my answer, because I thought there's a little bit of rational. Like people can die in it, and so I thought, like, what is something that was actually irrational? Or I mean, are silly. It's like there's nothing's going to happen. And I remember, it's funny the things that scar you as a kid, but I saw some movie and it was like there was fighting going on. I don't know if it was Kung Fu or like a Navy SEAL, something I shouldn't have been watching, and a bone was broken, right? They got the arm and bent it back, and you hear it, and I was like, ugh. And to this day, you see someone get shot, you're like, yeah, that happens. But then if I see like a bone,
what?
I'm just saying, like you see a war movie, you're like,
in a movie.
Oh, in a movie, yes.
You didn't say a movie.
I beg your pardon. Yeah. I'm pretty jaded. No, in a movie, you see someone get shot and you're like, okay.
Sure.
But if I see, even though I know it's in a movie, but like someone's arm or whatever bend the wrong way and break, and it gets to me. So when I was a kid, I saw like, oh, the arm was bent. And so when I would go to bed, it wasn't that I couldn't sleep with an appendage over the edge. Like I could lay on my stomach with my arm down. That's no problem. But if I'm laying on my back and then my arm kind of is off and it's like the edge of the bed is on the joint, I'm like, anyone could just come by and hit my arm and it's going to break. It could break. It could. And so just even the pressure, even though it felt good to lay on my back with my arm off, I couldn't escape. Like if anything happens, my arm is going to bend back. So I can't sleep on my back with something off like that. And if I'm on my stomach and my leg is kind of off at the knee, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's not that I'm afraid a monster's going to get me, but just something could be broken if it's
like Graham could run in at any moment.
Well, no, because that's as an adult. I'm saying as a kid.
Okay.
I wasn't thinking that. Yeah, so it's not a fear now, but yeah, back then I didn't. And like I said, a silly fear, like I can't sleep with my arm. Where it's,
why were you sleeping so close to the edge anyway?
Man,
relax.
This could have been another question. I always sleep on the edge of my bed.
Really?
All the time. If I'm at a hotel by myself, I'm on the edge.
Okay.
It's like I don't know if it's a security thing. I like being on the edge.
How is it a security thing?
I don't know. Like it's a comfort thing, not a security thing.
Get out of bed
No,
quickly.
I like having the ability to like.
Or
if I'm
ninja breaking arms.
I think it's also if I'm hot, you're at the edge of the blanket, so you can easily put a leg out.
Yeah.
And so and usually, like the nightstand is near you, and so to this day, I always sleep on an edge. I've tried it in the middle, and I'm like, I'm too far away. It's just
you're just swimming in there.
I am. That's what it feels like. Yeah, yeah. I like an edge. So
all right.
Yeah. That's not a fear. That is an enjoyment.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. Anyway,
sure.
What about you?
I remember as a kid, I was a little kid, probably 13 or 14, or no, I think 3 or 4, but I might have been older than that. I remember walking with my mom in downtown Topeka, and at the time anyway, on the sidewalks there were like metal grates that were covering like storm drains or whatever they cover. Yeah. And I remember being afraid, stopping while holding her hand or whatever to even walk across a metal grate. Yeah. So I remember that, being afraid of that as a little kid. So
I think that's a little warranted.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we were at Chicago a few years ago, and some of the grates are there, and you could see.
Yeah.
You can see
those
in,
big,
right?
Yeah, you could see like, that's like a story down.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, I'm scared to walk on it, but also like, whew.
Yeah.
Right.
Except that there's all these people walking.
I know. But my adult brain has to say, this is fine. Right. You can do it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it is a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being scared of heights.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But
sure.
Yeah.
Well, have you guys ever been on the bridge at the Royal Gorge in Colorado? This is where I know it. Probably other places are like this, but you walk across the bridge, and a car will go past you, and the cars are traveling very slow. It's not normal traffic on the bridge, and because mostly it's foot traffic, but a car will go past, and it'll shake the bridge. The bridge will tremble.
Yeah.
Which I remember being freaked out by too as a kid.
Yeah.
But to be fair, that would still freak me out today.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
As an adult, yeah.
Yeah. If I did that, I'd be like, this is not this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah. Like in those instances, I have to remind myself that some intelligent people designed those things, so it should be okay.
Right.
Kind of like the Sears Tower in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Where you
Yeah.
can walk out on that little glass
Oh,
thing.
man.
Oh, yeah. I have a
That's
picture of that in my
nonsense.
office.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I really had to convince
Yeah.
myself that
Yeah.
like people built this for the
Right.
purpose of someone
they're
standing
making
on
some
it.
money off this.
And then I did it. And a week later, someone was on it and it cracked.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really?
it cracked.
It
They
cracked.
didn't fall through.
They didn't fall through, but
Okay,
it cracked.
Oh man, that would no. Did we go? I feel like we were there together.
We were in Chicago. I don't know if we went
did
on
we
the.
go up the
I don't-
Sears Tower?
So I went with.
I feel like
I
we
was with
went
Graham
to
and
the
Sale a couple
Sears
years
Tower.
ago, and we went up it, and I don't remember. To me, it felt like a new experience. So I don't know if we went.
I think we did, Zach.
Okay.
You're blocking that out. I think.
Could have been. Could have been.
I don't remember if we just went there, like
'Cause we
to
had to
the
pay.
building, or if we
Yeah.
went up. I know I've been up before because I've walked on that, and it's like no bueno.
I mean, it would have been what, like 06?
Yeah, huh?
Okay. I'm just trying to think. Like it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I'm trying.
It was a long time
We
ago.
saw the. Do you remember the movie that we saw?
No chance.
The Prestige by with.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Christopher Nolan. It was one of my favorite movies ever, and you were just like, "What?" And I was devastated. I was like, "This was," I'm new youth pastor, and I'm like, I'm putting myself out there. I'm saying we should go watch this, and you were like, "It's just like dueling 19th century magicians." And I'm like, it's Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman.
I don't.
This is an iconic. It wasn't iconic at the time, but it ended up. It's really famous.
Yeah.
It's still one of my favorites.
We went to that movie.
It was you, me, and Sherry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember that we were. Yeah, but I don't remember that, and I'm not sure why were we there. I don't.
Oh, it was a
for
church planting conference. Church
but why
planting.
was it just us three?
Well, I mean, like Pete was there, Sammy was there,
Yeah.
but Sammy had to go back to work. Pete, I don't know if he had to go also.
We were just hanging out.
So it was like there was a group of us, and then for different people had to leave, and so it was just the three of us.
Yeah.
And you guys probably would have liked to have, I don't know, a date night, but then this
Zach's like, "Can I go?"
25-year-old,
No, that's fine.
25-year-old is
was
like,
good.
hey guys,
Yeah, it was
I'm
fun.
still here. And you're like, all right, we'll
It
go
was
to
fun. It's just ingrained in my memory. I really meant a lot to me.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that movie, but I remember us going places and doing things.
I remember
Just
that.
the three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I had Chicago pizza, the deep dish pizza.
Yeah,
I
sure.
remember having
Yeah.
that for the
Yeah.
first time.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right.
Yep. Silly things.
I feel
to be
like there's
afraid
other
of.
things to think of, but I'm. Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to Nehemiah chapter 2. And he's talking to the king. The king notices he's sad or he's upset. He's asking him what's going on. And he said, talks about all the things that are going on back home and how he wants to do something. He's really moved by it. So, and we're looking at question number 7. And it says, why did Nehemiah care so much about Jerusalem? Why was he willing to risk so much? And what do you care about enough to risk stepping out of your comfort zone? In the same way that Nehemiah did, because he did risk things. Craig, what did you have?
Yeah. So first, I mean, I just thought about the fact that that's his people. He has ties to them. That's. I was kind of thinking. I was trying to put myself in his shoes a little bit. I
Who
guess.
are your people?
Well, and I just thought like he's
Tell me
away.
about your heritage.
I was just thinking he's away from them,
Uh-huh.
and so if I heard about like people, my family, like in McPherson going through something,
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, I would
Yeah.
drop
Sure.
what I'm doing to figure out like, can I help them? Can I?
If there was, God forbid, a tornado that went through McPherson, that would move you.
Right.
Because even if your parents had moved already or whatever,
Yeah.
that would move you because you
know
grew up
enough.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah.
So yeah,
sure.
it's just kind of that the familial tie to that, and then another layer of that would just be it's God's people, chosen people, and so both of those things are kind of converging here, I think,
Right.
and influencing what we talked about on Sunday, his decision and how he approached the king, and really it made me think about like I pray this all the time, and I pray it with my kids. and really just to have a heart for people, to see people the way God sees them.
Right.
And I guess you could kind of add that, like that's another layer of just really caring for people made in the image of God, so they're worth loving and dropping things to go help this situation.
Right.
So as I thought about this passage, it was like, well, we saw before in the first chapter his dedication to God through his prayer and fasting, and how he handled the beginning stages of this situation. And so obviously he's very much trying his best to align himself with God's plan for his life and how he should interact with people. And so I found great encouragement in that through this passage, just kind of those different angles of how he would be viewing this situation and how it's affecting him. And the last part of the question, like, what do you care about enough to risk stepping out of your comfort zone? And it really going back to kind of that made up scenario of like family and McPherson, and like I don't have like a concrete example, but like putting myself in his situation and thinking about really aligning ourselves with how God sees people. It just made me think like, well, when I see people hurting or struggling or whatever that might be, stepping out of my comfort zone might be giving up my schedule or my time or resources, and just being willing to take that step toward them and meeting them in their situation and meeting them with compassion and love and helping them through it the best I can. So that was kind of what I was thinking about that question.
Yeah. When you were starting off, that's what I was thinking too. Why does he care so much? And you said, it's his people. And I said, his people are affected. It's his heritage, his ancestors, his history. He hears all about that going on. But still, there's enough of a separation where it's not like he remembers his hometown like you do. But
He's probably never been there.
Right. Yeah. And yet it's, like if you're Irish, it's like, oh, Ireland is, it tugs on your heart, and you're like, still not a lot of people would have.
Well, you say that. Richard McKelvey in our church, he was born in Colorado, yet he still has family in Ireland.
Right.
And he went there a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And like all he talks about now is he just wants to go back.
Yeah,
because that's where his family is.
Right.
So
his heritage
absolutely.
is his history, belonging.
Yeah.
But and you also mentioned it too, which I thought the connection to God as well. It's not just like, oh man, my hometown, my where I'm from, is not doing well, but he still recognizes who he is, and so not just for himself, but his people are connected to God. And there was a promise. That he said in chapter 1, verse 8, it says, remember the instructions you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are on the furthest horizon, I will gather them from here and bring them to the place that I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. And so he's holding on to that. His identity is not just my nationality, but that we are God's people, and God is true to his word. And so if we do this, then like if we come back to him and we obey his commands, it was the other thing, then he will be faithful to us. And so I think there was this, recognizing there's still hope. Like, man, God is going to be faithful. I just want to follow him, and we can still do this. Why was he willing to risk so much? Because he hoped in God. Like he recognized how important it was, and that they were his people. What do you care enough about, stepping out of your comfort zone? I started making a list. I'm like, I think this or this or this. And then I realized they all came back to God. Man, I'm not going to say like, oh, it's just so hard to be a Christian. For some people it may be, depending on their journey, but man, do you step out of your comfort zone if you're a Christian? Like when I started in student ministry, it wasn't because I love kids and all this stuff. It's, I wanted to serve, And so I asked, Mark Palmer, hey, can I help? So he's like, hey, you can teach Sunday school. And I'm like, oh boy. Oh, okay. Never done that. I was so nervous. I mean, extremely nervous just to teach that first Sunday school lesson. I thought I want to serve. I want to see what it's like to serve other people in other countries. So I signed up for in college a mission trip to Honduras, and no experience, didn't know anything. I was like, I had this protection of my team, and then they're like, hey, would you be willing to preach? And I was like, oh no, please no. Through a translator for the first time ever outside of class, just very,
Sure.
out of my comfort zone, in a village, on a soccer field, I think that they had a sort of makeshift one. But there's just a ton of things that I've done over the years that really just boils down to I want to be faithful to God in what I'm doing. And man, does it stretch you. The more you try to serve him, you'll be put in situations that you would not choose to be like, I want all of this, but God will continue to use you if you're willing to be used. And so that's what I care enough about. And also with my children too. Like that was my actual first answer, like stepping out of my comfort zone. What do I care enough about? And I was like, oh, my kids. But even then it's raising them to know Jesus and trying to do things that I think are best for them, even if others don't.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that when people are hurting, we ought to hurt for people. I think God hurts for the hurting, and for sure that Nehemiah sees folks hurting in Jerusalem, that they're living with this kind of constant shadow of vulnerability because of the lack of walls and just that constant threat. And it's interesting, in chapter 1 it talks about, okay, so the walls are torn down, but so are the people, right? Because they're just worn down by the whole kind of the fear and the anxiety and just how big a challenge it was. And so the folks the morale is just so low. And we can see, when people are hurting, like the fires in California, and you read stories and you see about, firefighters from even other countries coming to help fight those fires, and all the humanitarian aid that goes on in those sorts of kind of disaster situations, and all these great stories of people lending a hand and doing whatever it is. Maybe they're firefighters who are going to fight the fires, or there's stories about chefs and cooks who put together food for folks and all those kinds of things. So and for sure ministries here at Wallula Christian Church, like our Third Thursday ministry or the Shelter of Hope ministry, what motivates those? Well, first, they're motivated by people are hurting, and so we want to try to help and serve there. And I think that moved Nehemiah, right? He saw people hurting, and he wanted to help. But I think you're right too, Zach, that there's a bigger, and it's true even today, those Third Thursday and the Shelter of Hope and the helping ministries and all those things that go on here. Well, yeah, we want to meet that immediate need. We want to kind of ease the pain some if we can, but there's a bigger picture kind of going on, and the truth of eternity is always in the I don't know if background's the right phraseology there, but it's in the back of our mind anyway, that there's we want to show the love of God because God loves us, and he's already demonstrated that through his son, and so we want to share that story in whatever way we can. And so one of the ways we share that story is by being Jesus' hands and feet. And when he walked this earth, he taught and preached and fed people and healed people, and we want to do that in the small ways that we can, and so we want to act like Jesus, and certainly Nehemiah was looking to help those folks and wanted to restore the city of Jerusalem, the city of God, back to its kind of place to honor him. And so, we want to honor God in our actions, and that ought to motivate us, like it motivated Nehemiah to step out of his comfort zone. Hopefully that's what motivates us to step out of our comfort zone. To do those things like we mentioned on Sunday, and I don't, they're kind of goofy things or whatever, but to invite your neighbor to church, or the friend you've been talking to at work. Look, I get that that's a huge step. That for most people, that is outside our comfort zone, and we don't, we're risking, just like Nehemiah in different ways, but Nehemiah was risking this really important relationship with the king when he asked, hey, this is what I want to do. And I get it, that when you reach out and invite somebody to come to your small group or to worship or whatever it is, you're risking that relationship to one degree or another. And but if what we believe is really true, then, man, it's worth that risk.
Yeah, for sure. So as we move forward in this, we're looking at question number 10. And when Nehemiah was asking, like, hey, can I go back? He also asked for, help and assistance along the way, and that he wasn't just trying to go and figure it out on his own. So the question number 10 said, when we're doing ministry, why is it so important that we don't do ministry alone? That even if you have the passion and the desire and maybe the skill right away, to still not try to tackle it head on by yourself.
Yeah.
What'd you have, Craig?
This made me think of, I don't remember where I heard this recently. Maybe it was one of you guys, or I read it somewhere. I don't remember. Someone was talking about the fruit of the Spirit.
If it's good, I'm going to take
credit. I was about to say,
so
I'm excited.
Someone jump in here. It was on the fruit of the Spirit, and someone said, you can't exercise those things or demonstrate them and show that you are being led by the Spirit if you're just by yourself. Like, you can't be patient if you're hanging out by yourself. And you can't show kindness if you're just like, those things can't happen in a vacuum. And either of you say that?
I have said that.
I think Zach might have said that on this podcast.
Was it?
I know I've done it from the stage as well, but talking about, like, if you want to have patience.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, you have to have someone test your patience in order to grow in that.
Right.
But it may have been.
I'll attribute it to you.
I probably got it from someone else. It's not like it's nothing new under the sun. But
it just made me think of that because we're the way that we are designed by God. We're not meant to go through life on our own.
Right.
We are relational beings, and so even further, to do ministry means that we need other people. It made me think of a lot of the stuff we talked about last year when we studied Acts. The early church, the model that they gave us early on, sharing needs, eating together, praying together. So they were doing it together. When we followed Paul's journeys, he would say, hey, come with me, or there's a group of people together. It was never a situation where Paul just went off and did all this stuff by himself and it's just, we aren't. And I just wrote down, I thought about the worship ministry. I am not able to just take on the load and just week after week try to just do it by myself. Like, I have strength, but I have weaknesses, and the worship team can fill in those gaps and bring different skills and gifts together. And when we do that, like, we're living as the body of Christ. And it's a beautiful picture of what we're supposed to be doing. And that's what I thought. It just comes down to the fact that if we want to be successful and fulfill what God has for us, we got to lean on each other and utilize other skills and really work together.
It's a great picture, the great illustration of this, because just while you maybe are capable of playing drums and keyboards and bass and guitar and singing, it's really hard to do all those things at one time. And while like this last over Christmas season, when the week between Christmas and New Year's, we have a very minimal kind of worship service, and I think it was just you playing acoustic guitar, and that's good.
Yeah.
Right. That's more than fine. It's good.
Yeah.
You know, and I kind of really enjoy that
Right.
once in a
The
while,
toned down
right?
one. Yeah.
And but maybe not the best every week, right? Maybe not the best all the time. And while you are capable, all I'm saying is, while you're capable of carrying out that ministry to one degree or another by yourself, man, it's so much better when
That's what I was going to say.
else
Even if you
joins
could,
in.
it
Right.
sounds better with more people. You know, like with other singers with you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And well, when you said that too, I just thought, if it were to be me every single week, that would probably like bump up my ego a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
look at me, I'm just
Sure.
I'm just making
You
this
are
happen,
you're doing
and
it
I'm
all by
I'm
yourself.
doing it, so I don't need anybody else.
Yeah. You're limiting how like the possibility of what it could be and and where that could go. Yeah, there's so many ways I could have answered this, because I just thought, man, in how God created us at our core, we're not designed, not only ministry, we're just not designed to be alone, like in community and everything else. The whole, like with technology and social media, where it's designed, a byproduct is you're just by yourself more. Yeah. And what do you know? Like depression, anxiety is going way up. Like kids are not just naturally interacting. And so I've told the students, like when someone's in prison and they, if you kill someone in prison, how do they punish you? Well, they put you in solitary. They put you away from everyone, and that can mess with you if you're by yourself too long. And so, it's important that we don't do ministry alone, because just how God created us. Even when it talks about the body of Christ, I was looking this up, 1 Corinthians 12:12, but it says, just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. And so when we're together, we have different strengths and abilities, like you talked about. And when we can do that together, man, it's just so much better. So practically, it's better. Also, in Galatians 6:2, it talks about how we should carry each other's burdens. If you're doing ministry alone, even if you technically can, and even if it's better, I think I should be the only one. Man, after a while, I mean, if in the Bible we talk about how this life is a marathon, good luck trying to do that alone the whole time. When you're doing it by yourself and you have no one else, it leads to isolation, burnout, lack of accountability, just so many different ways for you to trip up or falter or just burn out. And so it doing things alone, I'd said already, but like produces higher anxiety and depression, even bitterness. And also practically, when we think it's all on us, like I have to do ministry alone, or I don't trust anyone else to do it, or I don't want to ask anyone else, it doesn't let other people step up. Like I didn't start here because I thought, I want to do this and I have these plans. I asked, can I help? And Mark said, yeah, I'd love for you to come help me do this little thing here with Sunday school. And this has for sure happened to me, where I think it's more on me than it should be. And this is my last point, but it's easy to assume that I'm the one doing this if I'm doing it alone. And then I push God away. I don't rely on him, not trusting in his leading, but more on my abilities. And so that could happen as well. So anyway, lots of different reasons. But man, doing ministry with others, life with others, fun with others. What I really liked, one of the things in your sermon that stood out to me was, and I forget how you worded it, but invite people. Like if you're going to go rake the leaves, invite someone. If you're going to go watch a game, invite someone. Whatever it is, just doing real life stuff, and and I thought that was a really cool point.
Yeah. To me, it just I'm so keenly aware that when you think about ministry and you think about Jesus' example and calling, folks to follow after him, and I mean, you think, okay, Jesus is Jesus. Like he's God's son. He's performing these miracles. And yet, even like when he feeds the 5,000, he kind of turns it over to the disciples, right? You feed them. And they're like, are you crazy? How can we do this? We'll pass this out, guys. And then everybody has enough to eat. And he utilizes and allows them to participate in ministry. And you wonder, well, why is Jesus doing this? He's obviously capable of feeding these 5,000 people. And yet he uses this little boy's Happy Meal and then the disciples to pass them out. And I think mostly Jesus called those folks to follow after him and allowed them to serve alongside him because he knew that the church was going to be a thing. He knew that they would carry on that ministry. And man, when I think of that, well, first of all, we have a responsibility that, and I know this podcast has been a little dark. I mean, Zach's like, hey, I see somebody shot, and it doesn't affect me, and then
it doesn't faze me anymore.
Yeah, he's talking about solitary confinement.
Seen it too much.
And now I'm gonna, every one of us is gonna die.
That's right.
But it's true.
Yeah.
The church, until Jesus returns. The church is going to carry on beyond us, and we need just like to follow Jesus' example in discipling others, helping others catch that heart for ministry, and learning how to carry on the ministry and to serve that. And I think that's why mostly Jesus called folks to serve alongside him in that way. But then you think about Jesus' ministry, and okay, Jesus could have done this by himself, and he was capable of feeding those 5,000 people. And I just look at the church, and you think, oh, well, if you wanted Lance to do everything in the church, you're out. I'm not capable of that. There are so many things that I am just not able to do. I don't have the abilities, I'm not talented enough. I'm not skilled enough. And I don't have all those gifts. And that's the beautiful thing about how Jesus designed the church, and he intends for it to work, for every one of us to utilize however small or big the giftedness that he's given to us to be used in the church. And there's a place for every one of those gifts. There's a place for a position for every one of us to play on his team. And man, we need every one of those positions.
Yeah.
Can we live without one of them for a time? Probably. We can get by. But it's not, I think about little kids' baseball teams, and maybe one of the kids doesn't show up, so you play that baseball game with 8 players instead of 9. Can you get by? Well, yeah, but that base hit to right field where little Tommy's not there is going to be a triple. There's nothing you can do about it, and so can the church get by without your gift, without your position? Probably for a time,
right?
But it doesn't change the fact that Jesus needs your gifts to be a part of his church.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. Like from Jesus' point of view, he's wanting them to do it because he knows he's not going to be here. So who are we to be like, no, I got it. It's like, you think you're staying here?
Right.
It's like, you need to help raise people up too.
Yeah.
That was really good stuff. Well, I'm going to say this. We're going to date the podcast with me saying it, but I feel like since it just happened, the Chiefs are going to the playoffs, and selfishly, they planned it right when we were doing our vision dinner on Sunday as well. So we just sent out the message saying, hey, we want you to come to the vision dinner, but now it's been moved to after church at 12:30. So if you're hearing this the week that this comes out, we want to encourage you to, well, first off, just know that it's been changed. But also, if you were unsure about the going at 5:30, you can stick around after second service.
Yep,
we got the chili cook-off and the vision.
Yeah.
Lance is going to talk about last year and also what's going on this upcoming year. So hopefully you guys can sign up for that, and we hope to see you there. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Awesome.